Well, good morning, everybody. This morning I kind of waited for the sun to rise here across the eastern part of the United States because I was curious as the sun came over Pennsylvania if we would see some overcast skies, and certainly there were quite a bit of clouds across Pennsylvania. Now, the cloud shield you see to the south of this is all associated with the overrunning that's coming from that big subtropical ridge that's delivered this just truly devastating ice storm that's hit parts of the south, getting into the mid-south. But today is a holiday, a meteorological holiday, and this morning in Punxsutawney, we did have Phil get yanked out of his box where he would normally be hibernating. I think most groundhogs hibernate until early spring. At least I know the one that lives under my neighbor's shed doesn't usually come out until once we get fully into like March. But anyways, we got its opinion of the upcoming forecast, and this is what it saw. So it said it saw its shadow. So I'm not quite sure how because of how cloudy it was. Plus, they yank it out just as the sun rises. So anyway, groundhog, if you'd like to know, there's a great article. I linked it in today's report about the groundhog's accuracy. This is just fun, just to make sure we're all aware. But in the last 10 years, the accuracy stat's about 40% accurate. But it's a hard measure because the country's huge. So what may apply in one place doesn't necessarily apply in another. Just so you know, the groundhog loves to see a shadow. 105 times since 1887 versus predicting early spring 20 times. So just some interesting stats. Now, what I did in today's report was I wanted to kind of compare this to what CPC is currently looking at. So you have two graphics here. The one on the left shows you the latest CPC update for March, April, and May. That's the temperature anomalies, and the one on the right shows the precipitation anomalies. We walk through in the report some of the biases that are known in these forecasts, just so that they're understood. And I just want to make a point here. Could we possibly see more mild conditions early this spring across the southern tier of the U.S.? This is definitely a possibility. Given what I've seen lately in the position and strength of the now developing subtropical jet, and the lack of sustained cold air. I mean, we've had multiple shots of it. We're working on our third one right now. But the lack of sustained cold air is kind of just possibly an early indicator of what the atmosphere may want to continue to do. In other words, if I used persistence as a guide, I think there's some validity to this. Now, some folks in the Northwest and Northern Plains could look at this and be quite concerned because remember, last spring was incredibly cold across the Northwest into the the Red River Valley of the North, delaying planting, causing some major late frost events here. We're not seeing that same sort of magnitude of event this year. But on the precipitation side, things seem to be divided. When you're east of the Rocky Mountains, the division line seems to be along the Mississippi River. East of it could be some tighter planting windows, according to nearly every forecast model suggesting wetter conditions along the Ohio River Valley, mid-Mississippi River Valley, Tennessee Valley to the eastern Great Lakes. And you say, well, the models continue to show drought here in the plains. In fact, if you look at the newest update from the U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook, they just continue to paint this area with persistent drought and even drought redevelopment here. And what we have to understand is that it's very difficult to break a drought in winter. And on top of that, we need to fully see how the spring rains and thunderstorm patterns evolve in March and April and May to understand if this drought could be relieved. So this is the best information we got right now is being shown here by NOAA, but it does evolve, and we're going to watch it evolve. And probably the biggest factor in that will be what the ocean temperatures are doing by the time we get into spring. Because if we're right now seeing kind of the last big push of La Nina, then we would expect to start to see some sort of subseasonal factor taking over into spring. And the warmer water is already showing up here. It's a good sign that the La Nina is fading. And the fluctuation in the MJO is critical as well. It's all stuff we kind of cover in the in-depth report. I think the more important thing I'll be watching is how quickly this fades in comparison to the warm water here that's a part of the negative PDO cycle. That's going to be an interesting thing to continue to discuss and kind of walk through. So we cover some of that in today's report. We also dive right back into the current issues with the ice storm. So the latest data here from poweroutage.us shows somewhere in the neighborhood about 480,000 people without power, most of them from this ice storm event that's come through here, and Texas with over 400,000 without power this morning. And my good friend and colleague Bill Chapman, who lives in Austin, sent this picture just showing some of the ice accumulations there. Now, the greatest ice accumulations are north and east of his location, but it just shows you how much ice has already accumulated in that area. This all hazards weather map will be changing today as this ice storm finally fades and moves east and becomes mostly a rain event over the southeast. But still, as of 7 o'clock this morning, We did have a large area here under an ice storm warning with winter weather advisories and a winter storm warning tucked around that. The other piece of this is going to be the shot. It's relatively brief. It's out of here by this weekend of another Arctic shot of air coming across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and settling into New England, where we could see wind chills here of minus 30 to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit as we approach Friday into Saturday. So let's go take a look at the high-res NAM to kind of get an idea. I'm going to start you off at 9 o'clock, and what you're going to notice is across the south, by the middle of this afternoon, we should be done with the accumulation of this ice, and we're going to see mostly a rain event taking shape here. And while that occurs and that cold air moves across the Great Lakes, I mean, can you see the front pushing through here? Look at the, I don't know if you want to call these tendrils or whatever, but look at how long the models are currently forecasting these lake effect snow bands to be. Very impressive, and I'll be kind of anxious to watch the radar imagery later today and tonight to see if those do form like the models are suggesting. But rain moves through parts of North and South Carolina down through the southeast and then clears by midday Friday. All right. At that point, again, the coldest air will be in place over the Great Lakes, and we're going to watch again for the lake effect snow. And there's a frontal boundary coming in on Friday into the Pacific Northwest. But that's not the main show for the Pacific Northwest. We're going to have to wait until later this weekend when this much larger low comes in. And before that, a couple of clippers roll through the Canadian prairie, not delivering a lot of snow, but we'll move through here and potentially put down some light snow throughout the Canadian prairie over into Ontario. Now, the cold temperatures we're seeing this morning, this is just kind of where the current coldest air is. And again, this is going to continue to filter east with time. And I want to show you that by going to the National Digital Forecast Database. So these are the forecasts for high temperatures today. As we play this forward, now you see it settling over New England tomorrow, over the Great Lakes and New England tomorrow, where parts of the interior New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine may struggle to get above 0 degrees Fahrenheit. But watch how quickly on Saturday the temperatures moderate here. And that colder air pushes east and leaves. And this is Sunday's high temperatures compared to normal. And Monday and Tuesday. So almost instant relief. The warmth here is going to melt a lot of that ice quickly. And even out there to next Wednesday, we see mild conditions. Now, I'm going to come back to these temperatures in just a few moments here, but I want to show you the other component of this by doing this multi-model analysis on the precip, because there is an important system I'm trying to keep an eye on next week. So if we just play through what we've already seen, again, GFS is on the left, Europeans on the right, that now gets us out there to Saturday where the NAM left off. Now, both models are seeing this system that's going to be coming into the Pacific Northwest this weekend. So this is Saturday, getting into Sunday morning. This is one that could put down some snow in the Cascades, Central Oregon, and also down here along the Sierra Nevada. As this presses through, though, we're going to end up seeing the wave kind of get, I don't know if the word is dispersed or what, but it's going to elongate this area of low pressure that's going to stretch from the Hudson Bay all the way down to the southern plains. Now, the GFS over here on the left is slower with the second system that comes out. The first one, Monday night into Tuesday morning, moves over the Great Lakes. The European model, look, 1, 2, 3 systems are going to be setting up. And the European model slows it all down, keep an eye over here, and develops a large low that comes out of Texas. Now that low is going to then, after it emerges with this first lineup here, moves right over the Great Lakes. Now I call it slower because of the progression of the main wave. But what's interesting is the GFS doesn't resolve it. It actually sees a second system developing out of parts of New Mexico and Texas later on that day on Wednesday. So you see how the models are a bit off in their timing. This European has a system moving over the Midwest by next Wednesday evening, and the GFS is much later in the delivery, while another system is coming into the Northwest in both models. So this is going to be the trick for next week. Just watch as I rock back and forth over next Wednesday. That's going to be the difference maker. So we need to keep an eye out for potential for a substantial system somewhere in the Midwest or in the plains next week that could be important. I do really lean on right now the GFS's solution for days 8 through 14, the week 2 pattern. I think it looks a bit deceivingly dry for the West. I think there will actually be more activity in the West given what I'm seeing the ridge placement is in the Gulf of Alaska, possibly shifting west. But I certainly see that this area goes back over quite active as the subtropical jet really starts to reform around the ridge that'll be sitting here over Florida, Cuba, and out into the open Atlantic. So we're going to watch for that. The temperature pattern, though, goes over mild. If you just watch, this again is the latest update from the European model. It's a 5-day sliding window of temperature anomalies. As we press through the middle of the month of February, now getting past like February 16th and 17th, we just see the model continuing to favor an extended time period of above normal temperatures from the Canadian prairie through the eastern 2/3 of North America. The colder bias we see returning to the west. Again, a lot of this is driven by the snowpack here showing up as a bias in the models. But if the ridge I just mentioned a moment ago does in fact move west, way over here toward, like the Aleutian Islands, then you could get some troughing along the west coast and some cooler weather. But right now, I'm not prepared to call this cold for this area, except for in the interior. All right. Lastly, just the newest update on South America. There's really no change at all in the models. They were quite consistent with the same pattern we've been discussing. So limited chances for rain coming through Argentina, where it will be hotter and drier. Very wet conditions continue for central Brazil, but the drier weather to the north could lead to a more rapid kind of uptick in harvest. So we'll stop there, and I'll talk to you again tonight with the in-depth report. Have a good one. Thanks.